Okay, so now we're getting an overview of a very important topic in Kafka, which is called security. And so right now what we're seeing is that our Kafka cluster are plain text, open, unsecure, and stuff. That's what happens when you start with Kafka. And so any client can access your Kafka cluster. We launched a producer and a consumer right away. There was no password, and we were able to write and read to any topic. So overall, that's pretty dangerous. And the clients are not authorized specifically to do things. And then all the data you send to Kafka is visible on the network. So there's no encryption. So someone could intercept the data being sent in production, or someone could publish bad data or steal data from your production cluster as well. Someone could delete topics in your production cluster. All of this is quite bad, right? And all these reasons are pushing for more security and to have a proper authentication and authorization model. So this is just an overview again, but here's what it takes. Encryption in Kafka is basically ensuring that the data between your producers, your consumers, and Kafka is exchanged securely. And so that means that there is some encryption that happens so that anyone on the way cannot decrypt the message being sent. That's kind of a similar concept to what happens when you visit an HTTP website. Basically, if you go on google.com, the information that you exchange with Google is secret to you and Google, and no one on the way can find it. So in Kafka, this is what it looks like. We have a Kafka client, a producer and consumer, and it talks to a Kafka broker on port 9092 usually, which is a plain text port. And we send some information. It could be sensitive information. So here's an example, username and password. Usually people don't do that, but it gives you an idea, right? With encryption, usually, which is set up on port 9093 and is called SSL encryption, well, basically what's being sent to Kafka is an encrypted data. And so the idea is that in flight, when the data is in flight, it's safe. And then the Kafka broker, upon receiving the data, will decrypt it and store it on disk. So encryption in Kafka is really important. And then once you have secure encryption, then you need to authenticate to Kafka. And so authentication in Kafka basically ensures that any client can prove their identity when connecting to a Kafka cluster. And so this is pretty similar to concepts like a login, like username and password, okay? When you go to google.com, sometimes you log in and Google knows more about you. So the idea is that we want the same for our Kafka clients. So the Kafka clients will say, hey, here's my username and a password or something similar, and it will give Kafka some authentication data. Kafka will verify the authentication, making sure it's we are who we say we are. And then finally, once Kafka is happy, we are authenticated and Kafka knows who we are. And the idea is that with this, we can basically know more about the clients and understand what they can and cannot do. So authentication in Kafka can take a few forms, right? You can have SSL authentication to authenticate using SSL certificates. You can have SSL authentication, which is basically plain username and password. Kerberos to use something like Microsoft Active Directory. And it's quite strong security, but it's hard to set up. And Scram, which is username and password as well, but it's pretty strong and it's not too hard to set up. Okay? And when our clients are authenticated to our Kafka cluster and we know who they are, then we have to authorize them to do what they're supposed to be doing. And so basically, we can say, hey, you can do user Alice, so application named Alice can view topic finance, or user Bob cannot view topic trucks, etc., etc. And all these rules you have to write down, such as your users are authorized to do certain things on topics and groups and cluster, and not authorized to do other things. And basically this guarantees that an application won't, by mistake, write to a topic it's not supposed to write to, and all of a sudden break everything, okay? So these things are called ACLs, or access control list, and they have to be maintained by the administration team and basically help have a process to onboard new users. So this is a lot of information for security, but if we put it all together, you can mix encryption, authentication, and authorization together. And basically what happens for your Kafka clients is that they can communicate securely to Kafka, they can authenticate against Kafka, and they can be authorized to do exactly what they're supposed to do to function correctly. So Kafka security is fairly new, but it's been out there for a while, still like maybe 2 years, 3 years, and it's evolving very quickly. It improves over time so that the setup is easier and it becomes more flexible. But currently, I think it's hard to set up Kafka security. If you go look at the documentation, I would say good luck. And the best support for Kafka security for applications is Java. But again, this has improved a lot. And now I think Python, Go, C++, C#, all these languages have good support for Kafka security.